Big fluff.
Take Danny to a safe place, and I'll take care of this bear. Zoom in limbo omnipotence!
What are you going to do?
I'm going to play with it. Get her out of here.
Are you crazy? That thing will kill you!
He's right, it's magic.
So am I.
Hey everybody, I'm Joel Murphy.
And I'm Andy McIntyre.
And this is Silver Linings Playback, the podcast where we watch maligned movies and we find their silver linings.
And thank heavens, we are at the end of our look through the X-Men movies. It's the last one, and we have a guest to talk about it. And it's a friend of the show, and it's Joe Dunn, and he's here to talk about New Mutants with us. Hey, Joe.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to be part of the X-Men month, and I'm so happy to see you guys again. The way you said this was the final one, though, made me think you didn't absolutely love every second of every movie you watched this one.
That's correct. That's 100% accurate. We did not.
Has it been a tough slog?
I don't know.
We've done worse. We've had tougher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but Joe, I think you'll appreciate this because I know that you've watched all these movies well before we reached out to you. But so the decision was to, obviously we watched 5 movies that are the worst 5 of the X-Men movies. So, you know, it's been an interesting reminder. I've also been watching the good ones like in my free time, but yeah, there's a lot of these are not good. You know, we started with X-Men: The Last Stand, and so this is now the end.
That's a dark place to start.
I think that maybe set the tone. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good.
No, it's not.
No.
But it's the best movie we've watched this month for the podcast.
Well, I don't want to take away from New Mutants, but just my 2 cents about The Last Stand is it is fun. It rewatches really nicely, and it's super X-Men crazy fun, but it's not prestige X-Men for sure.
Look, I remember, I didn't say this during the episode, but I remember when I watched that movie, one of the people that was with me didn't know anything about the X-Men and had never read the comics and wasn't familiar with the characters. And they loved that movie. They came out of it like, this is great. And I think if you didn't ever read an X-Men comic or care about the characters, you could definitely just enjoy that movie as just a movie. But
once they rewrote it all with Days of Future Past and said, oh, that didn't happen exactly the way that happened, it was such a relief.
It was. That's what's so funny, too, because, it was such a relief at the time. And that looking back at it now with all the movies that we got afterwards, that was the only point, was to undo one movie.
Yeah. So, guys, we messed up. Here's a $150 million movie to correct that error.
I wish
we're going to release 3 movies to undo this movie.
I think that should be the standard. I think instead of just being allowed to reboot franchises, they should have to stay with the franchise. Like if Jurassic Park gets so untenable that everyone stops going, they should just have to dig their way out. And
they should have to do dicey time travel retcons.
Time traveling dinosaurs have to go back and reset the timeline to
I guarantee that's already better than Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom or the third one. Guarantee it.
What's crazy about like Marvel sort of uncorking the multiverse is that even the bad stuff becomes precious in a way. Like there are people that are excited to see Elektra in Deadpool and Wolverine. And that's insane.
Okay, I'm going to push back with, are there?
Well, they might not be excited to revisit that character, but people are excited to recognize something that they recognize.
Yeah. One thing, I mean, not to give the MCU more credit than it needs, but Endgame made Thor: The Dark World valid.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's the triumph that we're not talking about from Endgame. Forget the last 45-minute battle, which was amazing. No, it actually made Thor: The Dark World have value, and that's its biggest triumph.
And it did that.
Great trick.
It did that in the same way that Days of Future Past worked, by filming new stuff that was not that movie, and just like, yeah, find footage from Thor: The Dark World in that movie. I think you get Natalie Portman sleeping, and that's about as much footage. And I think that only happened because she didn't film Endgame, so they just wanted to show her, so they had to use archival footage.
But we're here to talk about New Mutants.
Wait, but hold on. Before we do, Joe, Elektra's going to be in Deadpool? Because I'm very excited about that.
I mean, no one knows for sure, right? But if she showed up, we'd be like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Like Jennifer Garner?
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing? I don't know anything.
Okay.
I was just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's going to have Jennifer Garner and Affleck's Daredevil, and it's going to have the Blade from the TV show, and it's going to have
Nick Cage as Ghost Rider and Superman somehow.
It's going to have the Roger Corman thing.
I hope so.
By the way, we need a word for whatever it was in The Flash because it's not even nostalgia because we never got it. But when we saw Nick Cage's Superman, like, what is that? That's like just
nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Well, for people that know, it's a thing I recognize. So people that know like the Kevin Smith story and everything, it's
about
awesome.
The giant spider. Yeah.
But for people that don't know that, it's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah, it is. I find that increasingly now, and maybe this is just getting older, or maybe it's just how movies are made, where like I frequently have experiences where I watch something and I can tell that the things are references, but I don't get them.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another example of nostalgia. When you don't have nostalgia for something, that's also nostalgia.
I'm also someone who watched the movie The Fall Guy not knowing it was a TV show. So I didn't. And even when there were cameos at the end from the TV stars, I was like, oh, that's neat that these actors are here. And I didn't question it because it was a movie about movies. So I was like, no questions. Makes sense.
No, it was so weird. It's like, what's wrong with these two old cops?
But we are not, unfortunately, here to talk about The Fall Guy. We are here to talk about New Mutants, but I'd argue, talked about it as much as Disney did when they acquired Fox.
More, perhaps.
Which I think is probably as good a place as any to start because... So yeah, well, last week we did the end of the X-Men that we know and love. We did Dark Phoenix, and this was at one point planned to be the launch of, there were plans for 3 movies. Obviously, they were hoping this was going to be a franchise. Disney bought Fox. That changed everything, and a pandemic hit, and this movie was delayed, I think 3 or 4 times along the way.
I believe this movie was filmed in 1997 and then finally released in 2020.
Yeah, it was actually a companion piece to the original X-Men movie. That was the crossovers they were going to do. That's why because there was all those reports of the crossovers they had to edit out, but they didn't say that it was actually Hugh Jackman and Famke Janssen and like that cast.
There was definitely a period where it had been delayed for the second or third or fourth time, and it felt like this isn't real. Like they're trolling us. Like this movie doesn't exist. So when it finally came out, and it was a thrill. I was so excited that like it was a thing and we could go see it. But I don't think I saw it in theaters, to be honest.
Well, no, I think it first got released on HBO Max.
Oh, was it a direct to HBO Max thing?
No,
okay.
I think it had a theatrical release, but it was August of 2020. And so, and it might have been one of those like simultaneous, or I
think that might have been what had happened.
Yeah, I think it's when they were just doing that. Either way, by the time they released it, they just disposed of it. Like it was not given a proper release. And obviously at that point, Disney didn't care. And that was the other thing that I read is that they were supposed to do reshoots. And then depending on who you believe, either they scrapped them because Disney didn't want to pay the money, or they scrapped them because it had been 2 years and they couldn't get the cast together and the cast looked too old at that point.
I think both are probably correct.
Or they were like, good enough.
Yeah.
All three can be true at the same time.
But so,
Although,
oh, go ahead.
Anya Taylor-Joy looks the same now.
She
So
does.
that's, like for one, Maisie Williams was under a significant amount of makeup. Did like Alice Braga age terribly in the 2 years subsequent? Is that why that they've decided
She had
not
hard
to?
COVID.
Charlie Heaton, I think, looks essentially the same. So maybe that's not as true as we're thinking.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. But either way,
Getting them together was probably difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Well, also, could you imagine if you made this movie and they kept delaying it and you never thought it was going to be released and then they wanted you to do more work on it? You'd be like, nah, I'm good.
You're like, that chapter of my life is over. I'm not going back.
I'm Furiosa now. Leave me alone. Like, I gotta prep for this.
Yeah, that's a Queen's Gambit I won't fall for.
I never understood why Maisie Williams said that. That was such a weird.
I know, it's weird. It was a weird choice.
But yeah, so it's just this weird, it's honestly like thematically fitting for this movie because it's a movie about outcasts that was an outcast movie. Like, it's a movie that no one wanted, that, like the characters, is stuck in some remote location, being, I don't know, the dregs of Disney Plus. And we're three of the only people who have probably ever watched this movie.
It's true.
So what'd you guys think?
I'm going to come in hot, and I think I enjoyed this movie the most of any that we watched this month.
Okay.
Let's start there. And there's plenty to malign about it, but that's where I'm starting from. That I enjoy this movie, although it does leave a fair amount to be desired.
Joe?
I enjoyed it too. I'd seen it went around when it first came out. And so this is my first time revisiting it since then. But I enjoyed it this time too. I watched it yesterday, and it picks its horror tone and it sticks to it, and the characters are interesting, and most of them are built up pretty well. And it's exciting to see them not so connected to the X-Men, and to see them really building their own corner of the world. I liked it. I had fun.
All right. Yeah. I think for me, it's funny because we see clips of two different episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in this. And I felt like watching it that it feels like a Monster of the Week episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like I didn't dislike it. I don't think it's bad, but it doesn't feel like a movie as much as it just feels like a throwaway episode of a show about these characters or something that like, I don't know that it's the most interesting story to tell about them, but it's a story in a 22 episode season that filled out 1 week.
It's not even a clunky pilot. It's just a in between. It's a filler episode.
It's just a mid episode. It's just a bottle episode in the middle of the season.
I mean, did you guys think it felt like a pilot? I didn't feel like it felt like we introduce a character and that's our focal point. But I think if you forgot that and it was just they all wake up in this hospital and like it would just feel like an episode. Like you could trim the parts that would make it not feel like a single episode, which wouldn't be hard because it's a 96-minute movie that you could probably just make an hour-long television episode.
If you cut the flashbacks, it's an hour. It's a tight hour.
Right. And it's a tight hour about all of our heroes waking up in this weird hospital where there's a wall around them and the evil lady that runs the hospital trapping them there and then trying to kill them.
Man, that's as succinct a summary of the plot as I think we're going to get.
And the references to the X-Men are the sort of, season canon that we're alluding to for future, canon episodes. So like we're reminding people that something else is happening out there.
Yeah, the constantly seeded through the entire X-Men universe Essex Corporation that they never delivered on.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love about this movie is they build on it the most, or at least the sinister part of it. And I love I was never even especially a big Mr. Sinister fan, but the fact that they took such a big step with him here was really cool. And also the fact that they're not just slamming him down, like they're not just like, here's Mr. Sinister. They're taking the appropriate steps with New Mutants here, to build that character into a real threat.
And there are even rumors that John Hamm filmed some scenes as Mr. Sinister for this movie, allegedly.
It was supposed to be like an end credit scene, but then Disney was like, no, this movie is an end credit scene.
This whole movie is a post credit scene.
It does kind of, to my like TV show thing, it feels like what they used to do back in the 70s and 80s, where they filmed a pilot for a show that didn't get picked up. And so then they just would air it like on a Saturday night of just, here's a special thing. Like, we have this content.
This is the trial of the Incredible Hulk, except it's, as a backdoor Daredevil pilot, but it's just not working.
But yeah, I think its biggest crime is that it's forgettable and forgotten as it was being made. It had very unfortunate timing. Who knows what this would have done? I think if this had come out sooner, maybe they could have made more of these and it would be viewed more fondly. Because I think the cast works. I think the dynamics work. I think you could have built off this and made a second movie that probably would have been better.
Yeah, and I think like if the ideas are that like it was going to be a trilogy, each trilogy kind of doing a little bit of a different take on horror, that like this was sort of the like scary hospital horror. They're going to do like a more alien based one. And then I think there was going to be another one that was going to be more of a slasher flick type thing.
That's a great idea.
Is what I read was that was the original idea. And I was like, that's cool. And that's neat. And that's fun. But I also saw Josh Boone's The Stand, and that is terrible from start to finish. So,
Well, I'm going to, because I think we're all being pretty favorable, but I'm going to push back a little bit, Joe, on something you said, which is just because you were very complimentary of the horror tone. And since Andy kind of brought it up, I think there are horror elements to this, but it didn't quite feel like it committed. And from some of what I was reading, that might have been out of his control, but I didn't feel like it leaned hard enough into the horror. No,
yeah, I would agree with that. I would say they chose the tone, but they maybe didn't go as far as they wanted to. Like, they were committed to making an atmospherically a horror movie, but this is a PG-13 level horror movie. Like, there's opportunities for even jump scares that they don't take. Like, why isn't a head popping up in that washing machine? Like, they don't commit as hard as they could, which is kind of a bummer. And similarly with tone, like, if we're talking about things that are, maligned about this, they commit to what they're doing. But what a great horror movie has is moments of levity, where this movie has like maybe two, like the Breakfast Club sequence. And I laughed when Magic disappears and Sam's like, what the hell? The Slender Men are coming for them. And I thought that was really funny. And I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, we need more of this. Like, this should be peppered throughout so that the horror is more scary and then you get a moment to relax, like a proper horror movie does. And if this movie had done well and they'd really gone on to do different kinds of genres of horror, what would it have been like to see them push that like as hard as they could? It would have been awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's in general too. Like, I agree with you about the comedic stuff, but even like a good example too is the scene in the pool where with Anya Taylor-Joy, and then like it's kind of a fake out thing. That was a good scene and like built really good tension. But then it was kind of cutting back to the laying in the field, looking up at the sky. And like, I just felt like they robbed that scene of, like, it felt like it was about to be sinister. And then we cut away and then he's on fire and then it's over. Like, I felt like you could have stretched that scene out more and like gotten more mileage out of it.
I think what it really should have done was given more consequence to the character, to Sunspot. Like, he should have been a wreck the rest of the movie. And there's a scene later, like maybe 10 minutes later, where he's washing dishes and he has headphones on. And I was like, if that had happened to me, there's no way I would cut off my senses. Like, there's no way I would put myself in a position where I didn't know what was going on all the time. And that felt disingenuous to me.
Right. I mean, that's another thing too, right? Is that there doesn't really feel like stakes, even though their lives are in jeopardy. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of weight to what's happening. Right. So yeah, you never feel the stress.
Absolutely. And even though the characters, I think, are built up really nicely, like the flashbacks for the kids anyway, it builds them up so well. Like, I feel like they're all realized. they're all their trauma is different but similar. Like, you know, there's the ones that, yeah, anyway. The one character that doesn't work for me though is Dr. Reyes. I feel like the Marvel's put into us this sort of thing where, like, you know, the good guy or the bad guys have a point, like, but there's no Dr. Reyes was right shirts. You know what I mean? like she's just.
So I should cancel that order. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh crap! Oh crap!
She's just. She's a cog in the machine, and there's the mysterious boss above her that's giving her the orders to do things. But there's a real opportunity to make her sort of a person that thought they were doing the right thing. And then the bad guy of the movie becomes this unseen force. And also the true bad guy is the fears that are
friends we made along the way.
And that's and the friends we made along the way. But that's great when a bad guy is something that's not evil. It's just something that's happening. But they made her the bad guy. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity because her motivation was just kind of like, I'm here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, like, she never seemed like a true believer.
Yeah.
Because I think they're sort of like aiming in the direction of like Nurse Ratched vibes.
Yeah.
And it didn't deliver. Because there's really two ways you can take that character, and this movie somehow took neither. And there's the one that she's evil from the start, a la Nurse Ratched, or there's the other where she seems like she's a benevolent force, but then you realize that because she's such a true believer, she is actually an agent of evil to back this up. Or she thinks she's doing right, and then she realizes at the last minute, oh wait, are we the baddies?
Right.
And you go from there, right? Like, and this movie doesn't do any of that. They just have her get clawed up by Maisie Williams.
Which I feel like your third option is what the movie wanted to do, because I think, one, there's a case of, I think if you have someone who can summon a bear that they're not aware that they're summoning, that can like maul everyone and makes everyone manifest their worst fears, like, that's bad. That's a huge threat. And I think her, like, kind of just slowly trying to help her, but she can't help her. And then finally it's like, no, this character needs to be killed. I think you can make that point. You can have that character believe that and then realize, like, wait, maybe I've been on the wrong side.
They don't give her any kind of time to really explore that as a character. And it feels weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's, you know, the thing too is that you mentioned the Breakfast Club scene and everything. Like, she's not really integrated, even though she's supposed to be like their counselor. She doesn't really get to be a part of like helping them, or like they mostly do it without her, and she's just always in the background. And I think for a place that's like one set, you know, like, and a fixed number of characters, there was plenty of room to put her in more scenes in a more significant way.
Sure.
And she never even told them what would happen if you mess with the bull. Like, you know, if you mess with the bear, you get the teeth. I think that should have been a line in the movie.
Well, they were too busy explaining to us that inside of us, there are two bears, and inside of those bears, there are two wolves. And inside of those wolves, there are two ewes, and then you have to feed both of them. But if you feed them after midnight, then you become the bear bull wolf. I think I might have like
that's not right. Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
You got it.
No, and then inside of the ewes are spiders, and then inside of the spiders are flies.
Yeah, and if you give a mouse a cookie, then you end up feeding the wolf inside of the bear.
And if you teach the cookie to fish, then it can eat for a day.
But if you feed the cookie a fish, I
think that's right.
I just too, I mean, you know, she's young and she's had limited experiences, but at the end when she's like, I asked my dad, you know, which of the two bears wins, and he said the one that you feed, and it's like, did he invented that your dad came up with all that about the two bears and the one you feed? That's, I guess she didn't check that with anyone else.
I mean, someone, you know, she may have heard it for the first time from her dad. She seemed to live a very sheltered existence.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, her dad's really, what else did her dad take credit for? He's just
I'm pretty sure he also invented WCW.
But I'm just envisioning a world where he was around, like, honey, it's like I always said, let your smile be your umbrella. And she's like, whoa, Dad, how do you come up with this stuff? Like,
sweetheart, sometimes there's footprints in the sand.
And when there was only one set of footprints, it's when your dad, was carrying you.
Yes.
And then eventually her inner bear got sick of that shit.
That's actually what the bear is so angry about, is it's like, you didn't make up any of these.
Bear's like, I told you that.
It is wild, by the way, that all it took this whole movie was her to just look at the bear and be like, hey, not cool. Just stop, buddy.
Hey, stop it. Stop it. No.
No. No.
Well,
No.
I mean, okay, it's funny, but it's better than her just punching it to death, which is what the other team got to do, and we got to see their powers in full effect. Although they threw pews at each other at one point, which was odd. But that whole final sequence, okay.
Well, no, that happened because the notes that Josh Boone got was the movie needs more pew pew, and
well, I mean, we live in a
guns.
Madam Web world now, where people, they want their superheroes, and this movie gives you those superheroes at the end, which is really cool, especially after a movie of just kind of peppering it in here and there, which I thought was cool too. But if you went there to see magic, slice dudes up, you get to see it. If you want to see Cannonball let loose, you get to see it. And that last sequence, maybe this was a benefit of the delay, but it looked great. Like the visual effects were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And if it had just been one after another of them punching the bear, and then Danny punches the bear too, and that's how it dies, that would have been kind of a yawn. So, but her making peace with herself, I mean, it's a different kind of yawn, I guess.
No, I mean, I'm being snarky, but I actually did like that scene as well. Like, I think that it's the right move, and I think it actually, I think that as much as other times tonally, I didn't think they let stuff breathe or really hit stuff as hard as they could. They took the time with that scene, and I appreciated that. That they really did stop everything to have a heart to heart with the bear.
My only problem with that scene was all the bear puns in the beginning. Like she gives him the yogi. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 that Magic does where she's just like bear pun after bear pun after bear pun. And I was like, no, this isn't what I want exactly. And then I realized that like, oh, this just goes back to her in the beginning of the movie too, when she was being racist as to Native Americans. I was like, oh, she's just racist to bears.
If there's 2 things that Russians hate, it's Native Americans and bears.
I think maybe she just said the opposite thing. She didn't have a dad taking credit for everything, so she just learned everything from, really like internet sites and like she's a very limited frame of reference.
Her TikTok for you is a mess.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we hit the broad strokes. I don't know if there's anything else specific like we need to talk about before we pivot, but I think we kind of hit on the bigger picture of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's sort of in that liminal space, I want to see a version of this movie that the studio cared about. I think it would I think it'd be fondly remembered if the studio gave it the time of day. But we got the movie edited together from the footage they had, and they did a good job with it.
Yeah, and it is unequivocally better than at least like the last 2 movies that we've watched.
It's undisputably better than Dark Phoenix and Apocalypse.
Yes, and Origins.
And Origins.
I mean, really, the only conversation is this better than The Last Stand or not? But no, I'd say that the version that we got that they didn't care about is still solidly in the middle of like the X-Men filmography. I think it's not one of the best, but it's one of the perfectly fines. It's there with the Wolverine, I think.
Does it represent the X-Men better than those other X-Men movies?
You know, I think it does better than probably Dark Phoenix and Apocalypse, because I do feel like they kind of lost the thread of what they were doing and the themes of like, that was a thing that we talked about last week, where it was kind of strange how much they threw out the outsiders part of it and just were like, oh, because of this one thing we changed, everybody loves the mutants now. And like Charles Xavier's a celebrity and like he's super popular. And so it was like, I think it gets back to the fundamentals of like, these people are afraid of them. They're outsiders. They're the Breakfast Club. They're stuck in this like specific location where, you know, people want them away from the rest of society. I think all of that is much truer to what the X-Men are.
Yeah, I think one thing this movie does particularly well is it hints at a more interesting world beyond the walls of the Xavier Mansion, right? Where in all the other X-Men movies, even the good ones, they're living life at the mansion or they're superheroing about, right? There's very little hints at like what the world is like in major ways. And I think that this movie sort of hints at like the consequences of not being an X-Man, but still having mutant powers in an interesting way. And I would have liked to have seen, you know, that alternate timeline where they fold this in and see how like this New Mutants fits into the bigger world. I think that would have been really interesting to see, but oh well.
Well, I mean, in a couple of weeks, we might see all of these characters show up again in Deadpool Wolverine.
What are you getting this information from? Like, what site are you on? You clearly, have you seen it? Like, you seem to know a lot.
I'm on the side of fun. That's all. Bring it on. All
right. Anybody that's ever appeared in a Marvel property, it's going to be an X-Men, or it's going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine.
When Deadpool starts opening the portals on the end and starts saying on your left, and just the whole team shows up.
How great is it? It's in Deadpool 2, or I think it is, where they go to the X Mansion and he opens a door and the X-Men are there and it's all of them and they look great and they're just having a conversation. That's the best. He's going to open another door and the New Mutants will be there.
Hey, nice. What's this weird hospital?
Yeah.
Are we ready to pivot though?
Yeah. I mean, I think they nailed the cast. I think that everybody did a good job playing their character. You can maybe argue that Charlie Heaton's Appalachian accent is a little dodgy, but other than that, I think everyone did a really good job. And even Charlie Heaton was fine.
I think it's the best use of a Game of Thrones actor in an X-Men movie. So just gonna throw that out there. That very specific content.
Who am I not thinking of? Who did you burn?
Think about Dark Phoenix.
Oh no! Oh no!
It is definitely the best use of a Stark daughter in an X-Men movie.
And you know what? I won't just burn her. I'll say anyone involved in Game of Thrones, whether actor or writer or whatever. It's the best use of anyone from Game of Thrones.
That is high praise. That's good.
Yeah. I don't know if you know that, Joe, but Benioff wrote Origins Wolverine.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I have some letters to write him.
I just have two, F and U. I don't know. I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was really great as Magic. Interesting choice to make her the mean girl, because I don't think that's what she is in the comics, but it worked for the movie.
It's a good gear for Anya Taylor-Joy to play.
Oh, it's a great gear for Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah.
I really liked her.
You can't be that pretty and that blonde and not be mean sometimes.
I loved her dragon puppet. Like, that was really great.
Oh, I love that. And it's such a, I mean, Lockheed's such a cool character in the comics of, you know, sort of forever companion to Kitty and Ilana. But to have him show up as an actual puppet, and then to get to see him again at the end, we get to see Lockheed do his thing. So, I mean, I was so glad to see that, both levels of that.
I think that's how you do an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Like, that was very well executed.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to integrate it, to be like, if you don't, this is a fun thing, and then it like pays off into something that even if you don't know what's happening, you're like, oh, the puppet became real. Like, and that's still fun.
And it's still cool no matter what, even if you don't know the history of Lockheed in the X-Men movies. Yeah, I agree with that totally.
I love that this movie was 96 minutes. That will always be a silver lining on this show.
Yeah.
I will, any movie that comes in under 100 minutes, that's automatically a silver lining.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And I'll even, it's wild because like what we were saying before, I even would have given this movie like a few more minutes. I think they could have stretched the time a little if it was so quick and so breezy, because it's 96 minutes with the credits, which means it's about an 80 some minute movie. Like,
yeah.
So
like,
this was a episode miniseries. No good. Each episode focuses on a different character. We get to really dive deep.
it does.
I mean, this was really at 88 minutes. It is 2 episodes of an hour-long TV show. It's a 2-parter.
It is wild to think that, you know, we've kind of now talked around it officially, but just to officially say it, of like the timing of this and the fact that it was a Fox property, but you could almost picture a world where this just became a pilot for a Disney Plus show. Like if they had just believed in it and you could get all these people back, why not just turn this into a show? And I think people would have actually really loved it, especially because until the new cartoon, we've been really starved for any kind of X-Men content. You know, it's been 4 years now and we're just now getting Deadpool versus Wolverine. Like we haven't gotten anything except like Xavier and Beast showing up as like little cameos.
Yeah, as little nods. The X-Men theme showing up in Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
And that's about it. But yeah, no, I think they would have to get out of the hospital for it to work as a TV show, but like this does work as in these are the characters and this is what they do.
Well, they did at the end of the episode. They were out of the hospital, which again, I think makes it even more of a standalone because they're only in the hospital for this one, you know, hour-long episode. And then they're somewhere else next week.
Yeah. It's a different hospital. How do we keep winding up in these hospitals? But yeah, and I think that I think this movie, like if you're a fan of the characters in the comic, I think this movie does better justice to them than a lot of the X-Men characters get done in the movies.
Yeah.
Even the good movie, even the original, the first two, like Sabretooth kind of sucks. You know, for fans of Sabretooth as a character in the comics, you know, there's a lot of characters that aren't done as well as they could be. And I think in this movie, I think they nailed it as well as they have throughout for, you know, making characters interesting. So I think that was just, you know, it's nice to see.
Yeah, it helps that it's so contained that it's really focused on. Sorry, my dog. That's my dog. Sorry. I never hear that. He's freaking out about something. But it helps that it's so contained. It's just those characters. And we get to really focus in on them and their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, you didn't get a chance to do this because you weren't here on previous episodes, but I feel like I want to give you the same opportunity that we had of like, how do you feel about, I don't know, the X-Men series as a whole? Like, have you been like going back and rewatching these? Like, have you been preparing yourself besides reading all these spoilers online for,
besides being in the meeting rooms when this movie was
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up a fanboy, so like to be in the moment where all these movies came out was the best. It was, you know, just to go through it all. And I mean, tonight I went through my Slurpee collection and I dug out this bad boy.
Ooh,
nice.
Because when X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, I was super excited.
I think we all were. We're like, oh my God, Gambit and Wolverine. And because like the Wolverine origin comic was so good.
It was, yeah. And
that movie did none of it.
It didn't. It went in a completely different. It did to Wolverine what it did to Deadpool, which is blasphemous. Like it really is. I'll say I feel the same way I do about The Last Stand. X-Men Origins Wolverine is fun. I will rewatch it and enjoy it, but it is not good. It's a misuse of almost every character.
Except the Blob did it perfectly. That's exactly what we all wanted. The Blob. That's what we all wanted.
That's true.
We all wanted that boxing match.
And it started the career of BAFTA winning actor will.i.am on the big screen. So
That's true. The first stage on his EGOT was his introduction as not Nightcrawler in X-Men Origins Wolverine. But yeah, I think because
you mentioned Sabretooth being bad in the first X-Men. I mean, he's good in X-Men's Origins Wolverine, though.
Oh, he's the silver lining is
yeah,
Liev Schreiber.
Is Liev Schreiber, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I was going to say, Joe, too, because I think, you and I think are the same age, or at least about the same age. But Andy and I have talked about that, too, that like it's quite possible that like 2000, 2001 X-Men and Spider-Man in movie theaters might still be the high that we've all been chasing, like in comic book movies. Yeah.
Being a fanboy in that moment, just all the fan casting and like, Wizard Magazine, where you would find like who should be this character and who should be that character, and to see some of it come into life, like Patrick Stewart is Professor X.
Well, yeah, is Professor X.
Yeah. It was the strangest thing. And then to see it blow up 10 years later, and then 10 years after that, it's insane. It's to the point where the generations now don't appreciate, they don't care. They've grown up with Iron Man, and they don't remember a time when Iron Man was
a C-lister.
Yeah, a C-lister. That's perfect. Yeah. So it's so interesting.
It is funny, that will forever be changed, because we've obviously all talked about the comics that we've read, but I have such a distinct memory of like I'd see Iron Man comics and I hated them because he had that like mustard and ketchup like color scheme, and I never liked the way he looked. I never bought those, and I never read Thor because like the cursive letters and like it seemed very stuffy. And those became two of my favorite characters, and I think are like everyone's favorite characters now. But I never would have guessed that based on the comics that I read when I was a kid, because I avoided both of them.
Yeah, I bought a handful of Iron Man books, but it was definitely like if there was nothing else in the comic book aisle at the at the supermarket, I would pick up a Thor book or I'd pick up an Iron Man book. Whereas like anytime there was a Spider-Man book, anytime there was an X-Men, like I was always buying those. I bought a lot of Captain America too. I was really into him. But yeah, I mean, and I said last week that the X-Men were my favorite comic book growing up. Like that was my favorite. Yeah. So I was very excited about all of this, and it's been fun to talk about and revisit that this month for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Iron Man and Thor blowing up so hard, I think it lends towards the expectation. Like when Blade came out, before even X-Men and Spider-Man, like no one had any expectations about Blade, and he was the coolest guy in the world. It was like that movie worked so well, I think, because we weren't like, it should be like this and this and this. And that I hear actually they got the guy who played Hannibal King in Blade 3 to be in Deadpool and Wolverine, I think. He's there for sure. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and his part kept getting bigger because Wesley Snipes wouldn't show up to set, so he's got a huge part in Deadpool and Wolverine, from what I understand.
Yeah, possibly.
But yeah, no, Blade was crazy too. I watched that movie 3 times in the theater because I kept finding friends who hadn't seen it and being like, "You haven't seen it? Do you want to go right now? Let's go right now." Like,
and you were right to do it.
Yeah, and actually, I've seen it 4 times in the theater because they recently did a screening here at Vidiots, and it played just as well in 2024. like it was a hot crowd, which made me so happy. Like,
you were like Tracy Lords leading all your friends to the blood rave. You're like, right this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing, but most of the screenings you did have to walk through a meat packing plant to get to the theaters.
Also, if I had a nickel for every time Joel's been compared to Tracy Lord, I'd be a wealthy man.
Yeah, I can't go a single week, without. But it's.
How many selfies have you taken with people thinking you were Tracy Lord? I mean,
this week on the streets.
Just this week, yeah.
This week, I mean,
Tracy Lord cameo.
Yeah. Well, look, let's not bet about the cameo, because that actually funds this podcast. Like, we do pretty well there. Which I am available. Like, if anybody needs any shout outs, birthdays, would graduations,
Yeah, graduations, sure.
This time
Blood
of year.
showers are extra.
Oh man. But yeah, I agree, Andy. It has been fun revisiting the X-Men stuff. I am like, I really don't know what to expect with Deadpool and Wolverine, except that like it does feel like the goodbye to this universe, like that and probably should be. Although these days, like you said, there's a multiverse now, so maybe nothing ever dies anymore, and it's all just endless content loops. But it feels like a nice chance to hopefully remember this. This is like sometimes very good, sometimes very bad, but usually interesting and memorable universe of movies that was the first, like real attempt at kind of a cinematic universe where we got spin-offs and prequels and all of that.
Yeah, without it, we certainly wouldn't have had the MCU the way we have it now. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. I think it's over. I think we're done. I think
we did it.
Yeah.
A sigh of relief coming through.
Again, though, for some of the months that have been battles that we've done, like this has been definitely enjoyable. I would watch any of the movies we watched this month again over many of the movies that we've watched on this podcast.
100%. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. How can people keep track of you these days? Like, what are you up to these days?
I go to Joe Rules on Instagram. I'm there. I post every now and then. But yeah, I draw comics. I do art. So you can find it there.
I will not stand by.
I'll let you sell yourself that short, my friend.
And let you downplay because right now, if you are listening to this on your phone or the podcast version and you look down, those faces, those cartoon versions of us, that was drawn by Joe. Every piece of art that has ever been on Hobo Trash Can was drawn by Joe Dunn, who I say it to you every time. You're my favorite artist. I love the work you do.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Yeah, no, he's great. Joe is the best and is ridiculously humble, and I will not let you be humble on this show because, I've loved your stuff for a long time.
Because it stands even to greater contrast with us two egotistical dicks. We got to bring you up to our level or down, whatever that means.
I'm so egotistical. I'm both building myself up and pretending to be Tracy Lords. Like that's how much I need the attention. So, but yeah, check out Joe's work. Buy some of Joe's work. I don't know what you're selling or if you do commissions or whatever, but just hit up Joe and give him money. That's what I think you should do.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's a great plan.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always a pleasure, man. For real, it's been fun. And you are someone I think of, from like Joe Loves Crappy Movies and all that. Like I know you've talked about a lot of these movies before. And so it felt right to have you on this month.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love movies. I love talking about even terrible movies. So anytime you guys call, I'm always down for it, whatever it is.
All right. Thanks so much, man. All right. But so last chance, we're going to go out on this secret website that you've been going to. Hit us with your biggest, craziest, give us an exclusive. What can we expect from Deadpool and Wolverine? What's in this movie that we all are going to find out?
I mean, adamantium bullets for everyone.
You heard it here first.
Silver Linings Playback is a production of HoboTrashCan.com. If you enjoyed the show, please rate or review it on Apple Podcasts. Hear more great shows on the Peak Sloth Podcast Network.